recorded October 18th at 3:05 p.m. Mountain Time. It's like right there in the corner. It's like right there in the corner. I can't remember. I tried to do the Edward voice too.
I know you failed being Edward. I don't know what happened there. You
yeah.
Okay, I tell you what. Between today and next week, we'll practice. You and I will get together and we'll practice the Edward voice. And,
Thank you.
I think people know what it is.
Good deep low voice.
He does. Yeah. But it's a nice, clear, deep voice. It's not like he's been smoking 3 packs a day for 30 years.
Correct. That was me 2 weeks ago. I was getting over the red flu, and I still got the mucus up in here. So I'm still a little, I'm over it, but it's just still lingering. It's very annoying.
I'm glad you brought it to the show. That's great. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Rod.
So what have you been up to since you have been back? Obviously, I think you were in Redmond. You were off for a little bit, potentially. Maybe took some time off. I don't know. Maybe I'm lying there. You can let me know about that. But yeah.
Well, last week was basically like try to get through the week while being sick and still needing to get all your work done in preparation for this week, where we're starting a major new phase of a project with a customer. And it's been going really well. We had people fly in from all over the US of A and Canada, and we're working on this thing together, and it's quite interesting. So new faces, existing faces, and it's been just wall-to-wall meetings last few days. It's gonna be busy the rest of the week, and as we kind of get going here in the first phase of this engagement, so things are good. Yeah, pretty happy.
Yeah, I guess I forgot for a moment, which brings up a discussion I think we need to have concerning last episode. Last episode, for those listening and watching, if you remember, that was let's just call it our cliffhanger episode. And I had promised on the audio version that this week we would cliffhanger and Edward would finish his story. The unfortunate thing is Edward is not with us this week. He's actually, and this is something we need to talk about on the show eventually, maybe toward the holidays. Edward does this awesome super thing called Black Men Run, right? And it's this nonprofit organization that he runs this week. They're celebrating 10 years. They're having, obviously a running event and then giving away awards and all kinds of stuff. I forget where he's at, but maybe where he's located. Maybe I forget what city he's in, but he's doing that, and it's all good work. And I'm super impressed. I love it. I love what he does, and we definitely need to talk about that. But Edward's not here to finish that story, so I promise next week we'll remind Edward to finish that story so people don't forget. And we'll leave it at that, brother. We don't have to tell. We don't even have to talk about you shutting it down.
Perfect. It was quite the cliffhanger, and I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm glad that we planned it explicitly that way last week, and we've left everybody now on a 2-week cliffhanger. So I can't wait for Edward to provide closure to our listeners.
Yeah, and last week, if you remember, I think you and I we were wearing ball caps.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Remember that? I was wearing mine because my hair was too long. Look at this. Look.
It's a nice haircut, Rod.
Yeah, I got it cut extra short because I'll be traveling for like the next month and a half. So I've got Miami, not this weekend, but the weekend after. I have Redmond for 2 weeks, or Seattle, and then I'll be in Houston for a couple of days or something like that. But anyway, this is my travel haircut. Remember I mentioned last week, I don't like to get my hair cut on the road because it's just kind of a what if. It's a big what if scenario because it doesn't, if you don't have a regular person in those locations that you travel to, then you get a really bad haircut. And if you're traveling for business, nobody wants to look like a huge, I don't even know what the word is for someone who gets a bad haircut. Is there a word for it? We need to make one up.
Well, I'm depressed. When I get a bad haircut, I'm depressed. So luckily I pick a good barber now.
Yeah, but here's the rub. I waited so long. I waited about 2 months to get my haircut, so it's longer than normal. It's bugging the crap out of me, and so I went to go schedule with my normal haircut person this past week. Right?
Yeah.
And she no longer works there.
Oh no, that would crush me.
Right?
No.
So I'm thinking, what? So I'm doing all this research trying to figure out where she went. I felt like a stalker at one point because I'm looking on Facebook trying to figure what is going on. She actually moved to a different place. She's 30 minutes away, and that's just too much for me. I can't travel 30 minutes for a haircut. So I tried somebody new, and it worked out. So and they're literally like 2 minutes down the road from me. So I feel
I'm
pretty
glad
good,
it worked out.
but it
That's
worked out.
good, man.
I don't think people realize, particularly those who like get hair colored, get perms, get, do all that stuff. They don't really, us guys, we still kind of worry about that stuff too. We got to
Hey,
have to get a good haircut.
look good, work good, feel good, be good. It's all good.
So what do you have on the horizon? What's up for you?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm not doing this week, unfortunately, but it's a major thing at Microsoft, and that's Airlift. It's Airlift this week.
All right. I
Huge
was on one
internal
today.
training
Yeah.
sessions, yeah, across all kinds of topics, and I'm just because of this whole kickoff for this project, like I've been completely removed from it. I help co-lead the worldwide security community, and my co-leads Nabil and Jessica are taking point. I'm like, I'm sorry, I would normally love to, but like this week is like the week, so I'm missing the whole thing. I usually moderate some sessions, and then I love going back and watching all the recordings because there's tons of great content, and I think it's a good lead up internally before we start announcing maybe some things at Ignite and beyond in November. So shout out to the whole crew from for Airlift or everybody internally at Microsoft who helps make that happen. It's very important that it does. I'm glad we keep that going.
So I have a funny Airlift story. So Andrea is also not with us tonight, right? I think she's coming back into town tonight or tomorrow, something like that. She's been off on vacation, still answering questions and things on Teams in an email, and so she shouldn't do that. But still,
No, she shouldn't.
she left last week. Almost immediately, I started getting requests to attend prep meetings for Airlift sessions that I never agreed to. And I realized that Andrea had volunteered myself and Edward in some things, and they just started showing up. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what this is. I'm like, yeah. So I had to drop out. I had no clue what it was. So
Yeah, fair.
she punked us. It was pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. That's smart.
Yeah.
Well, Trip just asked in chat, what's Airlift? It's internal training week, effectively. Trip's community driven. It's all volunteer driven. So people submit talks. AI is huge, obviously. I don't know if you've heard, but AI is huge. So that's a big one. Tons on security, identity, compliance, data security, and then a whole bunch of other non-security things that are outside of my purview, pun intended. It's just tons of information. So that's what's on the horizon here, man. And then honestly, in 3 weeks, I'm going to the Caribbean. I'm buggering off.
Oh, wow.
So I'm looking
3
forward to that.
weeks. 3 weeks. Did you let us know? I don't think that's on the schedule.
I can't remember. I'll let you know. I'll figure it out. There's one day where I'm going outdoors for a few days, and then I'm leaving for the Caribbean that weekend. And then when I get back, it's Calgary B-Sides, and I volunteer there every year. So I'm basically taking 2.5 weeks off work. Depending on how November 1st goes.
It is getting to be that time of the year, right? So
yeah,
Microsoft people start to disappear.
Yeah, no doubt. And there you go, Jeff in the chat. I hear identity governance was a hot topic. Yeah, there's been a huge amount of identity governance items that have been announced that are very important.
Is that an airlift to the clouds? Is that a good assumption?
Was that a joke?
It was a horrible attempt at one, but yeah, of course.
Yeah.
What do I do? What do I do on this show? I just try to find ways to manipulate words to make it sound funny, and it's not always successful, but I keep trying.
That's like my whole life, man. It's all good.
I never give up.
It's all good. Yeah.
So for those listening in, Ignite is in November and in person coming up. So I'm finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel working on this pre-day workshop. Almost have everything together. It's going to be an awesome 5-hour workshop covering Entra, Purview, Defender for Cloud, and Microsoft Sentinel. So it's going to be a good time. We have a lot of really cool people that are leading that workshop, and then I think I have like 15 or 20 proctors, all MVPs and PMs and things like that. So it's going to be a lot of people that you want to know as part of that workshop. So for those that are actually attending in person and selected the pre-day, it's going to be awesome. Someone LinkedIn user says, I'm looking forward to the pre-day. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and Ignite's going to be great this year. We have a lot of really great content, a lot of announcements. I've seen the list. It's going to be pretty phenomenal. So people stay tuned. Even if you're not in person, everything will be recorded. You can watch it live or you can watch it after. So it's all going to be good.
Perfect.
What else?
And is Edward going to be there?
That's about it.
Or Andrea?
What's that? I don't think Andrea is coming. She might still. If she does, she needs to let me know real quick. But Edward will be there.
Okay.
Edward will actually be there with his team. They're having team meetings, and him and I will get together at least one day, I think. So.
Okay. Sweet. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
I will.
Um.
We'll have to do that one on site one day. But anything else from you, Mr. Trent?
There's always something, but I'm sure we'll discuss that as we go along.
Perfect.
We do have a
Well, should we get
guest.
to our guest? Yes.
I think
Yes.
so.
Great mind.
Well,
Great mind.
consider, yeah, I keep looking in the green room, waiting for this individual to nod off and go to sleep because it is like 4 a.m. I don't know what the time is. It's something early. This individual, I don't think has slept for 2 days. So
It probably happens at times. Joel, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you do, bud?
Yeah, most likely everybody will know Microsoft employee. That's probably the easiest way. It's how we all kind of know each other. I'm based out of Singapore, so I work in the APAC region, which is why they're saying I'm very tired. But I like these guys, so I decided, hey, I'll make an exception to wake up this early and say hi to everybody. Now, I am from the U.S. I lived and born, but I've worked half of my career has just been overseas, either like U.S. military type stuff, working in sometimes bad places like war zones. But then I've been working, in Asia for a while, and cybersecurity is pretty much everything. I have flown back to the U.S. for some projects there, but I think over here is very, very interesting because within 1 hour on a plane, you're in a completely different country, different culture, different mindset, and you get to it can go from extreme left to extreme right on just the rules, the compliancy, and how things go. And sometimes it's very fun when I work with the US guys because it's like, well, it's all the same here because it's just one big country. And so it's like, well, you forget that I could fly an hour and it's going to be completely different though. So my role is it's changed a little bit, but we have a team called the Compromise Recovery Team, and we work really close with the incident response team. And so they're like, well, what's kind of the difference? Well, the incident response is really kind of like finding what's going on and, telling that story of how it happened and trying to plug that initial way that hackers get in. Our team kind of looks at it more holistically, like, okay, if they use that method, what other methods did they not use that you're very exposed with that we can plug right now? And so we kind of work hand in hand. So we're trying to get the business back up. If it's been ransomware, very common, how do we get that back up? Give an easy example. There was a hospital and all of the patients weren't getting cancer treatment. And so you're under pressure to get that back up because people need cancer treatment. So that's the type of work we do where it's always very public. If it's in the news, it's very public. We just can't say that, hey, I was the person there doing that type of work. So it's like that, oh man, it'd be nice to talk about, but you really can't. So it's like, how do you talk about it without talking about it? It's one of those type of things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm learning that too, bud. By the way, speaking of compromise recovery, Herman says hi. I told him we were doing the show today, and
Okay.
I've been learning from him also on that team because I was very proactive consulting at Microsoft recently before the reorg that you're describing, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. It's interesting the rules about talking about or not talking about what you're doing at any given time. Very interesting stuff. But you have really good impact, but you can't exactly share that with people broadly, right? So it's an interesting dynamic. Yeah.
It's different projects. For example, if I'm on a project for incident response, I never accept or send LinkedIn invites because my view was if you look at the time period when you accept invites, that's a project and a customer you're working with. So they could say, oh, well, you accepted invites the same time as this public hack. You might have been the person that was there. So I normally wait about 6 to 8 months before I accept them. And I've told people that. But if I'm on a project that is proactive, like I'm doing some Sentinel and Zero Trust right now, I'll accept those right away. So you even have to kind of think that level of, I don't want to expose those customers that already have enough public limelight. People are getting fired, people are in trouble. It could be really, really bad, right? So, and yeah, I met Herman when he came to Malaysia here. So I had to, I guess I've been here so long that people do say, hey, do you know Joel? because there's not a lot of us in this region, our numbers are well under the 20s for this team. So it's like, hey, people actually know us, which is a good and bad thing, right?
Yeah, copy that. No, that makes sense. And yeah, the dynamics layer. I like your LinkedIn approach. I'm going to think about that. Yeah, customer I'm working with right now, they're unfortunately, like top of some news in their industry, right? Because of this whole thing. So you have to be very careful about what happens in these specific industries. So that's good advice. That's good advice for anybody working on those types of fronts. You have to make sure you don't accidentally expose yourself or them further while there's already a very challenging situation ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, Pirate,
breadcrumbs.
right?
Breadcrumbs.
Yeah, breadcrumbs.
There it
Good
is.
point.
Breadcrumbs, right?
Pirate in the chat, he said, he wanted to say that he really liked your video on secure comms during an incident. So we've got some people who've already looked at some of your content already. Do you want to talk about some of that content on your YouTube channel a bit?
Yeah. So, I've always thought it would be really fun to do some of these things and try to get this information out there, because I kind of had I always liked like being a teacher, but let's be honest, they don't really get paid that much as it would be nice to be. When I retire, this gray is catching up with me. I realize when I retire, I guess that would be my fallback. That what am I going to do to give back, right? I guess that's the answer for this community. And it was interesting. We had a bunch of college students coming into Microsoft wanting to do interviews and say, hey, so what's it like in IT? And I said, I'm going to apologize. And they looked at me like I was crazy, right? And I said, I'm going to apologize because you're going to inherit a big piece of crap. And they all, my manager's in the corner like, oh God, we should have let Joel talk to these kids. Right? He's a maniac. And I said, the reality of it is the longer IT goes on, you're going to inherit more and more IT debt. And I think IT itself is not going to be as fun, honestly, from when I started, because it's such a mess, right? And it gets more and more complicated every year, more and more compliance and more security. And I said, what the lion's den they're going to walk into in 10 years is just massively different from how I started. And a lot of it is just piss poor choices that we've all made in IT for the sake of business, money, convenience, security, and all the other reasons, right? And right. I just apologized to him and said, okay, now let's talk about your fun career, right?
Yeah. Just set the ground rules here.
Yeah, right.
What are you talking about? We always go back and audit everything and don't just build on top of each other's crap all the time.
Yeah, there's plenty of budget money for that.
Yeah, exactly. People love that. If I sit down and be like, hey, boss, I want to do a full Active Directory and GPO.
I want to be proactive. Nope, you're going to do the next time.
No, you're not. No. Yeah, until there's an incident, and then all of a sudden there's money, right? Yeah.
And that led to the YouTube channel where it was, look, I've always kind of liked the videography stuff in my own spare time. And I said, how much time do I have to invest in that versus taking away from family time? And I said, look, I can balance it where I can try to get one every 2 weeks is kind of my goal, because it's not going to be a full-time job. I'm not going out and kind of like trying to build a massive channel. It's more about getting this knowledge out there so it might help somebody before it becomes a problem, right? And just sharing the knowledge. That's really what it is about. I think sometimes we gatekeep, a lot of stuff behind, I would say, paywalls for things that could really save a company millions of dollars and really help somebody in their job. And so, yeah, I want to try to get the message out there. I guess that's really what it is. And I do pick more harder topics. So sometimes my brother said some of his students, because he teaches college at night, said that my content's too high level for them. So I'm like, well, do I go back and create the Welcome to IT series and kind of do some low level things versus some of more of the high level stuff? Because I kind of chose the far end, because there's so many YouTube content out there of the top 30 Windows commandlets. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. I don't know if I need to repeat that versus I'm trying to hit the things that when you get to that senior level, maybe this will be hey, this is something that we could start to implement, and you have that influence in the business to maybe adopt it, right? That's kind of the content I'm going for versus, oh, let me show you what you could do on a Windows computer because it's your first thing, right?
Right. Yeah. I think I would go for like the bottom 10 of everything, because nobody does that.
The least known?
Not the least known, just the worst value.
Worst value. Love it. Okay.
how to tank your IT career on day one. Walk in and say
Yeah.
this to your boss, right? Yeah.
How to stack
Shut down these
GPOs.
servers. Yeah,
Yeah.
shut down these servers. You're guaranteed to not get your bonus this year, right? Yeah, it's things like that.
Good segue, Joel. Share with us one of your growth opportunity moments in your career. You know, an oopsie. I think we've all had a couple of oopsies in our days. Yeah.
Okay. I always say, what was your action after the mistake? That's probably the most important thing, right? Did you actually change your habit? So I'm not going to use names, but you guys ever seen the movie Superbad?
Yes.
Yeah.
A very old movie. There was a guy who bought an ID and he forgot to put a last name on it, and his name was McLovin, right?
Yeah.
So I was working in a war zone. Okay, so you got to realize it's not a good place to make mistakes. And back then, everything was like there was a lot of hard coding of IP addresses and DNSs, and they were trying to change over to a new server, and so they had to fix the DC IP addresses. And each site did their own thing because it's a war zone, right? And we were kind of the lead knock of everybody. And they brought this new kid in. I say kid, he's like 5 years younger than me, and he was like very good at VB scripting. And I said, well, look, write the script and give it to the site and let them test it. He decided to run the script with one little white space after the DNS. So look, if you're not a VB scripter, which I really wasn't back then, the white space wiped out all DNS for over 500 critical military assets. So I'm asleep and I get a knock on the chew, which is like this little hut thing you live in. And I came out and they're like, hey, there's a big problem. So I go in and I'm looking at what happened. And it was one of those things where somebody was going to have to take the fall and they were trying to blame the more senior guy. Right. Hey, Richard, I see Richard pop up. More senior guy, because it's like, well, you should have made sure he didn't do that. I was like, I told him to give it to the site and let them test it, not run it yourself. He did get about half of them back because he noticed his mistake and he ran the script again, because there's cache time with that. But it was just chaos. And they had to punish somebody. So I was like, I got the punishment. But interesting enough, they sent me to like a small site for a little while, and I had so much free time on my hand. I said, you know what, I'm going to learn PowerShell. And it was like really when PowerShell was V1. So there was only 30 commandlets, so you could learn it. But I went and started writing scripts, and now that actually has obviously greatly helped me in my career, where writing PowerShell, ARM templates, Terraform, KQL, it did set that foundation where I'd always shied away from it. So a bad thing, nobody died. Okay, so there's a good thing in that story. But the mistake of maybe I didn't explain it to the guy good enough was a learning moment. It is what it is. But that was the outcome of it. I learned PowerShell, and then I tried to keep improving that throughout my career. And so that was
well, I just have to kind of stand up for you just a little bit. As an instructor or a leader, you can only go so far. Then it becomes on the person learning to ask the right questions. If they're not asking questions, then they're not doing their job either. So,
well, what was funny about that is that the guy's name, he looked like the kid from McLovin with the glasses and everything. So we printed out that ID and we stuck it up on like his little cabinet thing, right? We printed it out, and at nighttime, one of the guys came in and he goes up to me, he goes, "Hey Joel, why did he print out his driver's license and tape it up there?" So he literally looked like that, right? We had a clown car of people there. I'll admit it's some funniest times. We had a guy that looked like the Mythbuster guy with the mustache. And so he'd walk down the street to go get food, and the military guys would drive by in trucks and be like, "Hey, Mythbusters!" Like, it was just hilarious things like that. We had a guy that looked like Mario, and I had like a little box I printed out with paint, the question mark, and I hung that above his desk like a Mario box, right? He was pissed. Oh, that dude was so angry with that one. You don't have nothing else to do in a war zone, so you're with the same people every day. And yes, that's what he looked like. I swear to God, he looked just like that. It was freaking hilarious. So you mess with each other when you're over there. So I made this box that looked like it was a Mario coin box, and I made coins as well in paint and hung it above his desk. That dude quit. He was so angry he quit and changed duties. I was like, wow, I did they didn't like him. Like, hey Joel, this would be great. So he had a gun too. Maybe I shouldn't have pissed him off, but when I was over there, you could do things like that, and people had fun because we were all stuck in a not a fun place together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. Well, you found fun, right? It sounds like, and that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a good learning lesson. No big deal in the end. And like,
yeah.
so that sounds like a really cool life experience. And so now these days, like we're technically on the same team, just in different regions. We're in the security service lines. Like, how do you like consulting? What's your favorite part about consulting? Would you recommend people get into it in their careers? Like, just tell me your thoughts on the matter. All the goods and bads, Joel.
Honestly, it has the biggest pro of anything anybody could ever say is no matter how bad that project is, no matter how bad the choices are from my view, it's not my problem in 3 months. Right.
Right. You get to walk away. Yeah.
Like, hey, that was not a good choice, but enjoy, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I so that's the best pro of being a consultant, right?
Totally.
I'll give a great example. I used this phrase, and then my director over here stole it. I said, we just built these jokers a space station and they handed it over to the janitors, and that's SOB is going to come crashing back down in low orbit in like 6 months. And he's like, that's probably the greatest analogy, because we built this amazing thing and they didn't really show up for training. We tried to hand it over, so it's like the janitors are running the space station. This is not going to end well. I love kind of what I do because I get to see so many different people. It puts me in a really nice position. And that's one good thing I'm thankful for is in Microsoft, we can pick what we want to do most of the time,
Right.
which is nice. So there are the times you get stuff you don't like, but I get to move around. And so we get to stay on the cusp of what's coming out. Like Security Copilot, I've got to play with that a bit already, and I was like, "Wow, I found some really good use cases for that ahead of what everybody else gets to see." I'm already talking about getting a customer over here to pilot it while we're doing their Sentinel deployment already for them.
Cool.
Going through that,
Nice.
So that's some of the nice things. You get to touch the new stuff. You get to kind of get it in there, and you in the security space, you can actually see your value right away because alerts are coming in when you're deploying a system, or you're showing a customer how to, mitigate those alerts, which stops a threat, and they can actually see that value sometimes in real time. But the cons of it is always going to be, I would say, look, like top things. It's always not enough money, not enough time to sometimes do things the right way. So I think sometimes the challenge in my part of the world is there's too much outsourcing, not enough responsibility ownership. So I've ran a project. I think Richard was with me on one of these where you.
There you go, Richard. I think he was getting worried you weren't going to say his name. So there you go.
Richard was there, and it would be one of those ones where you completely train the contractor, and then at the end of the project, the contractor's gone. It's like, where'd the knowledge go? You just spent how much money, and it's just shift delete all the knowledge, right? Good job. Yeah. And I think that's where I would say it's some of that stuff's disheartening, because it's like, man, you thought you were going to leave them with something really good, but sometimes their business structure and choices, they're setting themselves up for failure, and there's just nothing you can do about it. But other times I get to actually get the ear of the CSO or CISO and say, for example, I have a zero trust coming up, and the CIO was shocked that I said, look, we're going to be giving you this PowerPoint deck about zero trust for your frameworking. If you want to do a mock with me before you do it with your board, let me know so you're happy with the content. And he was surprised that somebody would offer him at his level the ability to make sure we can do this. I'm like, what? That's normal for me. Okay, I guess you got the weird Microsoft guy, but I want to make sure that you're confident with what we're giving you. You can present it to your board in the best light, because some of it might be, obviously nobody's going to know everything about a zero trust principle. That's a lot of information to go over. So
yeah, copy that. And it's great that you're enabling them too, right? I think that's one of the pros, where it's like you want, do everything you can to enable the customer to show that value, to make sure that they feel good about the situation. I think that's an excellent example that you brought up. And the situation you brought up where you build them a space station and the janitors run it, I hear you, and it hurts sometimes. You put all that effort, like your personal effort, into something, like it's all paid, like you're there because it's paid engagement, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So money aside, your own personal time and effort went into this thing, and then you kind of just like, I mean, I learned a lot from it, and I'm sorry that you might not fully see the value, and so that can be a detractor at times. But then you get to come in and immediately help people out. You need to be able to remove blockers at times, like, get past all these funnels and verticals and actually start working with people and like say like, hey, let's sit down and help you. And like Herman just said today, be their personal trainer, push them to lift more weight, than they normally do. And so there's definitely pros and cons, but I also agree with you on the ability to pick your own work generally, unless there's like an incident response, like you're aware, or post.
Well, I didn't tell you about that though.
So yeah, okay, fair. Go ahead.
That's a little different. That one, I feel like a therapist or a counselor sometimes, because when a cyber incident hits, it's more emotion than logic. So you can take the most intelligent person, that thing just goes right the hell out the door instantly. And the reason it goes out the door is it's very emotional situation. I mean, I think I've seen, and I'm not good at this. This is not how I'm put together. My pieces don't work like that, but people just start crying in meetings. And I'm like, oh, wow, how do I handle this? I'm like, you need my wife. My wife's a psychologist, not me. She'll help you out, right? I can just say, hey, good job. Let's fix the problem, right? And so, that is a completely different situation with the emotions are running high. People are worried about getting fired. I've had, senior security people like, oh, we're probably all fired after this. We get this back up and running. People are like, why did this happen to us? Why did they target us? Like it's personal when it's not. The script didn't care. The ransomware didn't care. And so those ones, you actually spend more time trying to get the people's head right, to get them to help you, to get them to help themselves, right? It's like, look, calm down. It sucks. I know you don't, everybody's yelling at everybody. There's 5,000 clients gone and servers are gone. Your VMware infrastructure is gone. Your AWS got hacked. Your Azure got hacked. They just owned everything. You got to have to calm down. Everybody's pissed. Board's pissed. Where do we start? And that's where the Microsoft Dark guys, the incident response team, and we come in, and we actually have to take that time to get the emotions right. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of anybody. And then it actually takes longer and it's more complicated to fix sometimes. So,
well, and I think that's the thing. You going back to your little oopsie story earlier. A lot of times people feel like that's their oopsie thing, and it's not, because a lot of people don't understand this is going to happen, right? You just have to make the preparations. Unfortunately, people don't have the wherewithal to make those preparations, right? To prepare for this eventuality. I love the way you said it's emotional, because it absolutely is. People feel like they're going to be fired, but yeah, they just need to figure out how to accomplish taking care of it or approaching it, right? So that's super important. But it's going to happen to everybody. I've seen customers who've deployed Microsoft Sentinel who, they're pretty cocky before they installed it, and then Sentinel was installed, and they're like, "Oh crap, we've been compromised for months." So,
yeah. Or like Defender for Identity, and all of a sudden the alerts are just blowing up, and it's just like, oh, there's someone who's got persistent access across my whole domain.
Well, it's like you're not going to the doctor because you're afraid that he's going to discover something, and you're going to have to have surgery or something. So you just don't go to the doctor. You got these pains, but I'm not going to the doctor. He's going to tell me there's something wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
And like I was saying, that's right, Rod. And same thing here. Event happens. Now it's the best time to go and reassess everything and build back better, right? And actually, like, let's take a look in the mirror and see, like, okay, how can we be resilient moving forward to deal with this again? Because it's going to happen again, and now your name's out there. You're probably on a rehit list, maybe there's staffing changes that take place. Maybe there's tooling consolidations that have to take place. Maybe you take a long, hard look at that app that's running on that Windows ME beige box on your buddy's desk, and you're like, is that still a thing we really need? Can we modernize that or just punt it?
I keep hitting the turbo button. It doesn't really go any faster.
Yeah, definitely with all that. I would say it, and over here it's very, very, very interesting because, as I said, I could be traveling to 3 or 4 different countries. There's sometimes language barriers there, and I would say sometimes we're not as busy over here. Well, Australia, unfortunately, they get hit quite a lot, but I've been to some countries where they have to escort us around because, like, it's not really safe for me to be here. I'm like, oh great, this is a great Monday. But I do enjoy it at the end of the day because the one common thing you see is that everybody does want to try to do better, at the same time. And whatever their limitation is, either it's just there's no money, no funding, or just a bad culture habit that has lingered.
So is it a difference in policies across the different countries too, the way they approach things?
Oh, massively different sometimes, especially like in the banking industry, because everyone can just kind of do what they want in their own country. And you come in, and so you have to kind of balance it. Like a lot of times it's like, well, can we do this? And they're like, yeah. Can we do this? No. And then another country's like, you can't do that, but you can do this. And so you end up having to burn a lot of time making sure we're not making things, worse, right? An easy example, this one was hilarious. I didn't think it was correct. So it's like when you're not sure if you're right and you have to double check it. So there was a bunch of Swift banking servers that were integrated with the Swift system, right? And I was doing a bunch of like Active Directory hardening and looking at things for them. And I looked in the local admin group, and somebody added authenticated users. And I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right. That's gotta be crazy here. And there's 45,000 employees. So we went into it, and somebody added authenticated users to the local admin on a Swift banking server, and there's 45,000 employees. At any point in time, anybody could have logged into this server. Wow. And the CISO was furious. And I was like, okay. And like you said, over here, the way they let people control things in so many different ways of letting IT manage it, devs manage it, and stuff like that, you can get really mistakes like that could lead to a very bad place, right?
Well, has any organization that you've worked with, have you ever had to go back for the exact same thing?
Oh, yeah. So, this was hilarious, right? So I was at one of my colleagues. He came back stressed about a massive project that was struggling, and he was at the airport flying back to Singapore, and he finished his first bottle of wine, and he called me to, talk about things. That would be the phrase. And so I said, look, man, I just finished my project. Do you need an extra set of hands? I'll come over this week and help you. And he was just like, oh my God. So he hangs up, calls my manager. My manager calls me, says, hey, do you want to go? I was like, yeah, I'll go book my tickets right now, And so I get on site with him Monday, and I tell, if I'm not on a incident type project, I try to introduce myself different, meaning he said this. He goes, Joel's one of our recovery specialists, and if you see him, it means you're in a very, very bad day. It means you're in a very, very bad state, right? Yeah, like you've been hacked. And I'm like,
like the Taken movie. I have these skills.
Yeah. You're kind of telling people, if you see this guy, this is why you see this guy, right? And I always tell them, just introduce me as the Microsoft Dynamics specialist, because nobody knows what the hell that is, and then they avoid you. And I said, that's the easiest thing. Just tell them something that nobody wants to touch or know, and they'll leave me alone. So I'm like, oh, he's the Dynamics guy. Okay, I've heard of it. I don't know what the hell it is. And interesting enough, a month later, because we were deploying all the MDI tools, everything, they started getting alerts, and they were compromised. And guess who they brought in? So I come into the building, and they knew I wasn't coming. And then a bunch of people, I had to go up to one of the rooms, and a bunch of people were in there, and they're like, oh, he's here. Okay, it's something bad has really happened.
Dynamics guy. Yeah.
So I was like, thanks for that. I'm not gonna give the guy's name out, but he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know I shot you in the foot like that. I was like, yeah, but we have a good laugh of it now. But yeah, so if you ever see me on a Dynamics project now you know why. Right.
Yeah, no doubt.
Might I suggest you're the mesh guy? Because I think we've at Microsoft have used that term for like 5 or 6 different products now. So
that might be a good one too. Yeah,
HoloLens mesh.
Yeah, HoloLens guy.
That's still a thing. Come on,
Joel.
Where's yours? I see your Quest in the back there, Rod. Is that the new one, or is that the?
That's the. So there's a funny story.
Oh, good.
Should I? Yeah. Okay. So you know, at Microsoft, and I think most of our customers know this already, except for a few orgs, we have zero travel budget, right? Can't travel except for the things that we get approved for that are just kind of those major things that we absolutely have to do. But work paid for that Quest back there because we just all needed to have one. So I've used it a couple times. It's pretty neat. My daughter uses it more than I do, but it is super neat. It's just, I I think technology should be unobtrusive. If you have to strap something to your head, then you're probably not going to use it for life. So
Yeah. Because the chair looks like you got it set up perfectly. That looks like a damn comfortable chair ready to
yeah.
go with that thing, right? If you really
Well,
look at it.
I have watched a couple movies in that chair with that thing strapped on, but that's about it. And it's like the nature ones where the elephant is stepping over top of you and stuff like that. So
Right,
yeah.
right.
For those that don't know, it's actually pretty crazy. But
Have you played Star Trek Bridge Commander? That's the only reason I want VR, is so I can play that game. Because you're like on the bridge of the Enterprise.
I haven't played
And
that
you like
one.
pick if you're the helmsman or the tactical guy or the commander, you know, and you're like waving your arms like, I need you to go to warp. And the guys on the like, okay, I'm gonna go to warp. And you're like pushing the buttons and then like warp's firing the torpedoes in the back. And when I saw videos of that, I'm like, I want that. That's like
I don't have the VR because I've been really, really waiting. What almost sold me on it was the one where somebody recreated the original Legend of Zelda NES
Oh.
version inside of it, and you're like in the first person view of it. That was like
Oh my
years ago, and I
God.
was like, I almost
Yeah.
bought it right then because I was like, that is the most coolest thing ever, right? I was like, that's just so much nostalgia and emotion in one place. You've almost just here's my money, that Fry meme from Futurama, take my
Yeah.
money, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad I kind of held off because it's been such a fluctuating market, but I play a lot of games. Obviously, I won't stream or do that because I'd probably get fired for that one. That's why the YouTube content I can edit it where I don't get in trouble. Where if I was streaming games, I'd probably get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
Said something he shouldn't have said.
I have used the Sentinel console on that, by the way. So there's
yeah.
there's a couple apps in there where it displays your actual desktop, and so you're
Nice.
inside. And I can have multiple windows. So I have the Sentinel console running in one, and
Cool.
so you can do actual work in some instances. But
so how do you guys feel about that whole how like somebody asked me like, well, I got when recruiters do reach you sometimes on LinkedIn, and one of them, I was over coffee, and one of them was asking me like, well, what would you do? We got a bunch of SOC analyst position. I'm like, I would be wasted on that, to be honest, right? It's more of I could help massively improve your entire SOC and train SOCs, but I wouldn't go back to that level. And she was asking like the type of work I do. She goes, well, your LinkedIn doesn't have any of this. And I'm like, I still really haven't figured out the way to talk about what we do without giving specifics. Cause she's like, well, can you give specifics? And I was like, I can't tell you customer names. I can't tell you project names. Everything I can give you code names. It's not going to do you any good. It's like, I could say, hey, I've been on these 5 compromises or breaches. It's an easy example. What's in the news? It was the casinos, MGM and the other casino. Anybody in the world could say that they were involved with that project and get that prop themselves up when they're not really there. And there's no way to fact check that to say, well, I'm hiring the guy who helped MGM. Do you really know if it's that guy? I kind of had that. They use the word imposter. You see that on Reddit all the time.
Yes.
I did have somebody say that they were helping with that incident, and I was actually on it. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. So I have came across that scenario. I just wonder how do you guys think you talk about these things where you can't talk about them? I'll even take some tips on that one, right?
Well, like only recently have I started getting into reactive that leads into proactive work, and that's where it's more secretive, right? But like generally during my whole time here at Microsoft and with consulting beforehand, it was primarily proactive work. And so it wasn't, so I use vague phrases like I worked in critical infrastructure, I work in defense, I work in policing, and I just use broad strokes like that. Because it defines the industry or the vertical, which can give context, and then you just say what you did. But I hear you. You could definitely take credit for recovery efforts or incident response efforts because no one can ever check that with you. I don't know if there's a way to properly validate that, because even if they called your references, like let's say you were interested in this, they're not going to say either, right?
Yeah.
The only way you'd be able to know, like no one's going to say. So I guess it's fake it till you make it. I don't know. I mean, that's a really interesting one, Joel.
Really good interview questions, right?
I usually just, and it's not interview questions, but it's usually just kind of take the best practice route, right?
Yeah.
So as a best practice, do this, otherwise this will happen. And you don't have to mention names and situations and stuff like that.
So. It was funny that I'd ran into somebody who said they were involved with it, and it was like,
I want to meet the person because I saw the job listing. They were trying to hire somebody for like 2 months to rebuild all of their Linux VMs, and they were going to pay them like $30,000 for 2 months. And I'm like, I want to meet that person. So
here's your template. Enjoy, right?
Yeah.
I just I deployed it overnight. Thank you. Where's my paycheck?
No
And
doubt.
if you actually, we get involved with Linux, people don't realize that. And the Linux, like having insight to it, it's funny. Windows has its problems, but Linux has its problems too in a recovery. And I've seen it because sometimes it's so fragmented, and getting access to things is actually the biggest challenge over there. To the point where the hackers had access, but the employees they didn't. And when they were looking at the group config files, everybody that was in there had left the company, so nobody had access to it, right? So we actually get involved with the Linux side of it too when we're doing these incidents. It's not just Microsoft, and we look at multiple clouds. What has scared me in the past 6 months is massive uptake in pivoting back and forth between on-premise and cloud to cloud. Massive uptake in that. Very, very, very impressive, their knowledge of how cloud works. I mean, hackers really understand cloud to the point that, look, nobody's perfect. Some of the stuff they did, I was like, oh, I would have never thought of that. Again, it's great to see that. So you have to like respect your enemy. I guess that's the phrase here. Some of the stuff we've seen them do in the cloud is really, really impressive of how they get persistence and how they move around is very different than how you move around kind of with on-premise, right? So that's what I've been telling people is like, look, the next area is what have you done to your cloud, and be prepared because they're going to move around. The nice thing though is most clouds have all the logs automatically turned on, like it's there by default, versus on-premise you didn't turn it on. So you do have that pro, but the question is, are you taking action on that? Are you looking at it ahead of time? Blob store. Look, even Microsoft makes mistakes. We've had our blob storage that we left open, and we had compliance for it. We had a process, but we made a mistake in the process, and then we, fixed the process. So that's the same thing. I think of customers are in the same exact situation with these cloud resources, and then the hackers have just really stepped up their game in that space big time.
No doubt. No doubt. I like an unrelated project. Someone told me something interesting. They said, what we use as a leading indicator now, it's not malware and it's not high privilege escalation necessarily. We have an alert set for if machines start unenrolling off Defender for Endpoint suddenly, because like someone compromised Intune or something like that. All of a sudden, now they're removing the EDR from all the systems. That's a great leading indicator before something can happen. And it's just those types of interesting things you don't think about, right? Like,
well,
different ways
Herman's on the call, so you should have a really good catch up with Herman offline on this one. And if I had to, put a statement out there, the good thing about Active Directory is that it's so freaking old, right? At this point, the groups are the groups, and we know that bad boy inside and out. There's nothing to not learn anymore. Let's put it that way. I would say it's just, this is how you secure it, and it's not going to change.
Yeah.
The cloud is a big mess in terms of how all the groups and the permissions and everything nest. And sometimes picking it apart isn't as straightforward as just remove the domain members, right? And be done. Member of, clean that out. Problem fixed, right? The cloud side of it is very, very messy because you wouldn't think something like the billing administrator has a lot of power.
No, I just learned about this like a few months ago. It's crazy.
Right? So it's like, you have billing administrators. Well, that's not a big deal. And it's like, actually, it is. And you're like, how the hell is a billing admin going to cause a compromise? But it's that level has changed. And so there's a huge list. So Herman did some really good work as kind of, I would say, the lead of the IP for collecting Azure groups and putting together a plan to clean those groups up and how they overlap and how many different ways you can get into Intune, which what you said I've actually been involved with as well in real life. They got into Intune and pushed their own ransomware package out. But what you said is how many different ways you can get Intune. It's just not the Intune admin group. And if I clean that up, I'm done. There's a lot of other paths into that. And that, what I would say, is more complicated than on-premise AD because the cloud is very, I would say, massively integrated in it. And so Herman did some really good work with creating that IP where we can pull it out and then go through it and say, okay, here's all your high privilege ones. And customers are always like, why is compliance admin high privilege? Why is this high privilege? Why is that? It doesn't say admin on it. It says billing. It doesn't make sense. Why does the help desk actually have a decent amount of power across 5 different portals? That's a big mind shift for a lot of identity people that they're not really used to that approach.
Right. Well, and they need to look at each service as well, because each service kind of follows its own policies as far as who has access to what too. Like you mentioned, Intune, Intra. What's another thing I'm thinking of? The cognitive services, everything has its own unique access. So
no doubt. And I think it's in preview right now. We need to do a better job of identifying when there's a privileged role, because not everybody reads the manual and not everybody gets to talk to Herman or Joel, right? And hopefully nobody has to deal with us in a compromised recovery state.
Hopefully Joel never shows up at their place of business.
Dynamics expert Joel.
Dynamic projects.
More obvious, right? How do we make it more obvious that these are privileged roles we should take? It's not just global admin. I mean, there's a bunch, right? And so I think we need to do a better job of making that obvious to the person who's not necessarily going to go read docs. I know it sucks, but we've got a responsibility to be able to call that out. And I think there's a public preview right now where it's like, hey, these are highly privileged roles, or you need to protect these through PIM or through specific privilege access packages, through different layers of approvals, because you don't want to just be handing these out to everybody.
It once again, it's that learning curve. Azure went from, I don't know, I've been around where the old portal was like the blades and all that, until this massive thing that it is now, and it just keeps growing, right? And it's always going to be a challenge. I think the educational side with this, and like I said, the cloud compromises are interesting. I was called in, and a partner company was running the show, but they said, hey, we're just going to bring a Microsoft people to sit there, and we just rotated every 8 hours. And I had the CISO, and I was like, look, she's like, hey, do you have any thoughts? And I said, I'll tell you outside, because I didn't want to, blow up the boardroom. I said, look, my opinion is you're skipping some very critical things, and you could end up rebuilding the entire environment after rebuilding it. So that was on a Friday. So Monday morning, I'm on the taxi coming in, and my friend called me who I was taking over for, and he's like, they just got completely wiped out again. And I was like, damn, how do I have to be right that fast, right? And so I get in, and the CISO's like, we know what happened, but she's like, okay, I want you to kind of lay out the list of what's going to happen in the better order. And the reason they got hit was they had turned off their test VMs, right? But they had a policy on them that every 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. the VM turns on and auto shut down and auto shut off. So it turned back on in the dev environment, and the dev environment spread it right back to the production after they rebuilt the production. And so it could just be, hey, we forgot that we have that auto shutdown to save money, but those endpoints were dirty, and when they came back online, it just wiped out production, and all their work automatically gone again in like 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's tough. And the other thing is, sometimes in a recovery, exactly, Richard. Sometimes in a recovery situation, when you think that you're starting to win and bringing things back on, people can start rushing, and then you have a lot of hands in the cookie jars. And they need to make sure, like, hey, we need some ground rules here. Don't just be firing servers up, don't just be turning things back on like it was back in the day. We need to take very careful steps to make sure that we don't recompromise. So that's a good point, Joel.
There's another big point that a lot of people don't deal with. And I think I've had to deal with this more in the past year than my first 5 years doing recovery, is the lawyers are involved now.
Oh, right.
So a lot of things going under ACP. Attorney-client privilege. And so now it's even taking longer to get things back up and running, because you have to give this to the lawyer first, and they have to be okay with it before the next things happen. And so that's been a massive shift where even us were like, what is their language? How do I get this lawyer to understand that you don't really have a choice, but how do I word this so you'll say yes, right? And I would say attorney-client privilege has been a massive uptick in cyber incidents, because companies now are saying, wow, we could be fined for it. There's some countries have jail time for it. And so they need these lawyers involved with these incidents where they're going on. And the lawyers themselves have never been in this, and they're not even really understanding of the big picture. And so that adds a layer of complexity that you don't get in a normal project as well.
Yeah. We had someone on, I don't know, it was a couple months ago, talking about cybersecurity insurance. And that was one of the things that we discussed was how, yeah, there's legal that gets involved in part of that communication stream as part of the incident itself. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah, no doubt. Agreed. We've had that as well.
You guys ever been over to this part of the world? You ever get to come hang out over here?
No,
Kind of find
no, I'd love
Microsoft
to.
season?
I'd love to.
No.
I'm more like, when you go to some countries, do you like bring a burner phone? Like, do you worry about some of the governments and places that you're going in terms of like being monitored?
They give us 2 assets. I always bring my own little travel router. Actually, that's the next episode on the YouTube channel you were asking about. After I did the secure communication ones during a major incident, how do you talk? The other one I was going to do is a follow-up on some of the like a toolkit that I bring with me when I am on site with customers. I guess you got to walk the walk. Like, everybody says, oh, YubiKeys are great, but how many people could hold up their YubiKey at this very minute and say they're doing that? Right. And it's like, oh, I like to tell you to do it, but I don't really, my YubiKey is literally right there. But the point is, it's the same thing when I come on site. I can't trust the customer's environment either. So I do things a very specific way. And then, as soon as that project's over, the device I use there, I actually wipe as well. And when I'm there, I try not to I would never hook up my personal phone to their environment, but I have my own, I would say, travel router with my own VPNs and things in there. So if I have to use their network for whatever reason, I've literally been out at factories in the middle of some country that's like, there's nothing out there, dirt road, and there is no cell tower, right? So you kind of have to balance where you could end up. What do you do for that situation? And so I do plan to do an episode on kind of what type of toolkit I would have if I worked at a company where it says, okay, if we're in a major incident, it's like break glass. Here's what you would use in those scenarios. It's just good to have it there. And then you can probably put it away when you're done for the next incident, because you don't want to go to that extreme every single day. It's not practical, right?
Yeah, good point. Okay, that's good information. I like that. And just to give a shout out to your IT channel, to your YouTube channel, it's called IT Candor, and we'll put it in the show notes and we'll put it in the chat right now. And you've been doing that for a little while now, and I think it's awesome. I think that's one of the reasons why we met up in the first place here. So huge promo.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll make sure to get the word out.
You know what's funny about that? The day I posted it on my LinkedIn, I got like 25 messages offering to get me 1,000 subscribers in 1 week. And I was just like, you know what? Look, if I only have 50 people and 50 people get value out of it, good enough. You know what I mean? It's not I'm not a race to that numbers thing. In my opinion, I think it creates my opinion is some people just rush to a number and they think because that number is higher, the person has better content or things like that. I think we've gotten to that point where those numbers are really obfuscating good quality content. I've actually started, anybody who has typically 1 million subscribers, I've unsubscribed from them, and I kind of stick to people under 200 to 500. I try to stay around a little right around that range, because I think those people kind of maybe try harder sometimes and they get more interesting content sometimes. So I kind of look for those people who are less well known and try to hang out in that for the stuff that I like, versus the people who just have millions and millions and millions. I noticed a lot of days it's rinse and repeat the same thing for them. That's just my preference now, though. Maybe trying to, if I have a little bit of time, I'd rather give some of that time to somebody else who's new and trying. You know what I mean?
Good point. Well, Rod, I don't think we're at 1 million yet, so I think Joel's still gonna like our page. We got a little.
He might unsubscribe soon. I'm not sure. I don't know.
We're pushing it. It.
But we'll subscribe to yours for sure, and we'll put you over the top, so you have to unsubscribe from yourself.
Well, I did an Entra one. I know you might like that one, Rod, because you're an Entra, right? So I did an Entra video, like how to be an Entra expert.
Did you?
I did an Entra one on Entra.
I still can't get past the name. Sorry.
Yeah, so because I know Merrill. You guys know Merrill?
Yeah,
on LinkedIn.
Merrill. Yeah, he was on the show not too long ago.
Yeah. He presented at our offsite that we had over here when we were in Thailand, and he presented up there. And then I was like, I ripped on him at the end for a little bit. But yeah, I know Merrill because he works closely with our team with it. But he's done an amazing job. I'd say I like what he's done on LinkedIn because he breaks it down into very small, simple posts with maybe some little animations there. And I'm like, I think that's the best way for anybody to kind of digest and try to start understanding some of that complexity versus the people. And I'm like, if they don't like me, fine, but here's this big massive diagram and I'm smart. And I'm like, nobody can read that on their mobile phone. You're killing me. If I have to zoom in five times.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think I know who you're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah, but Merrill's is great. I think
Merrill's great. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just doing a I know who that is.
I know you don't.
Of LinkedIn, you mean? I just pissed off everybody. IT
candor. No, it's okay.
Candor,
it's okay, Joel. It's the internet. You're always giving somebody a hard time, man. But I think
exactly
we got to wrap it up, Joel. Sorry, man. Like we're at time. I'd love to have you back on. I think you've got another awesome amount of stories here, and I think people need to go check out your content.
Yep.
Like you're another excellent voice out there, not only for like what Microsoft's doing, but for like people who just want to help educate security professionals, even the good and the bad, right, Joel, of what that entails, what getting into IT and security these days entails. So thanks for all you do for the community, and this is very informative.
Speaking of one last question, because I wanted to ask this question. You talked about Merrill in Australia, and you work with Dart, which is not Dart anymore, but you know Matt Zorich?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. He's been on the show as well. Everybody knows Matt, so that's great. I figured you probably did.
Community. It is, but at the same time, it is good to get. Like I said, you said it. Get the knowledge out there. It's a tight community, but it needs to be a bigger community at the end of the day for everybody. So,
agreed. Couldn't say it better myself. Thank you very much, man.
Hey, next week, everybody. Thank you so much, Joel. Next week, I just wanted to mention this real quick for the listeners. You should absolutely tune in next week. We have super cool guests on talking about Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's going to be cool, right? Couple special super secret guests.
So. Yeah, I can't wait. I just learned about it today. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Cool, man. All right, Rod.
I guess that's all we have. Brody, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I got to get back upstairs before Herman yells at me.
Who is that person that keeps running back and forth behind you?
I can't talk about it. I can't talk about any of this top secret out of work security. Can't talk.
I thought for a second you were being haunted. It is Halloween almost after all. So.
It is. I'm looking forward to it. We're getting a big inflatable ghost for our front lawn. I can't wait. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Inflatable ghost. There's a joke there somewhere. Okay.
Okay, you end the podcast because I do it.
I do it. No, Joe, you'll end it.
I'm not touching
it. You can tell everybody goodbye, and we'll talk to them next week.
Everybody, goodbye.
Thank you for attending, everybody. Thank you for waking me up at 5 a.m. You guys were worth it, though. I'm going literally right back to sleep after this.
All right. Well, sleep well. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you next week.